Today, our presentation is about music education philosophical quotes emerged in publications in China between the years 1984 and 2023. This study is done by 4 of us. You can see myself and Yang Chen, who is here, Yiling is here, and Dan Shima is not able to come. First, the question about why we want to do this study. This study is about publications in China. And why China? China, of course, is a native country of all of these 4 co-authors. And also, from a global perspective, it also has some significance. First is that China is home to some of the most profound and lasting philosophies for 5,000 years and still continuing. So that is really a significant phenomenon around the world. Not many countries have that. Also, there is a Western influence, very strong Western influence, since the late 1910s. And that influence has become part of the philosophical discourse in China. So you can see from a long history of China to the early 20th century, in the late 1910s, there's a contrast between Chinese philosophy and Western philosophy. And since that time, there are many different opinions, discussions, and even a lot of debates and disagreements about the applications of Chinese and Western philosophies. These are very evident in many documentations and many publications, and also live discussions too, even up to these days. So the purpose of our study is to uncover philosophical sources quoted in recent publications, identified in the most widely used Chinese research database, that is the China National Knowledge Infrastructure, known as CNKI. And we found those in the years 1984 and 2023. And I'm going to give the microphone to Yiling to talk about the method.
Here's the method we researched in CNKI for publications in music, education, and philosophy. We started with 1,684 publications from 1984 to 2023. And we excluded those with no full-text access, and also those without mentioning of philosophy. So at the end, we analyzed 975 publications from 1989 to 2023. This number is a big data, and of these 975 publications, 675 journal articles, 208 master theses, 83 doctoral dissertations, 7 conference proceedings, and only 2 books. You may be confused about why 2 books there. We know CNKI always include articles in them instead of books, so it's really real here. The vast majority, 956, was published after 2005. We used a manual approach instead of computer help to Microsoft or something in coding and analyzing, because of the rich embedded contexts in history, philosophy, culture, semantics, literacy, and translation. And we also avoided frequency biases, that is, codes appears more frequently in longer publications. For example, doctoral dissertations always have more than 100 pages, so the same codes may use a lot of time. So to avoid this, we use the same codes only once throughout any publications. So these codes were based on names of philosophers and schools of philosophy. That is authenticated by 4 Chinese native speakers with research training and graduate degrees in music education. Let's move on to the result, the finding, which presented by Yang Chen.
Thank you. And currently we have 3 major findings for now. The first finding is about Chinese philosophical sources. We found out Chinese writers have quoted extensively from ancient Chinese philosophical sources, mainly Confucianism. And suddenly we jump to the 21st century Chinese philosophical educators, such as Cai Yuanpei, Liang Qichang, Wang Guowei, Xiao Youmei, and also music educators such as Guan Jianhua, Wang Anguo, Wang Yaohua, Xiu Hailin, Liu Pei, and Xie Jiaqing. Well, this is not just a simple name-dropping session here, because these people have been proven to be well-known in China. And you may already realize here's a huge gap here on timeline. We have those ancient philosophies, classics like Confucianism, and those are BC philosophies. In Chinese, okay, we see 公元前. So we have 公元前 philosophies, and suddenly jump to the 20th century. In China, we have 5,000 years of history. And I would say this is a huge gap. This is not even a gap, this is like a Grand Canyon. I mean, in this time of period, are there really fewer philosophers, or maybe those philosophies not applicable to this education, didn't contribute to this education? We don't know yet, and there are questions. Our second finding was about Western philosophical sources. We found out there are quotes from 3 20th century Western philosopher educators who prominently featured in many publications, and you may know their names. They are John Dewey, Ben Rimmer, David Eliot. And there are many Western philosophical sources who quoted from the ancient Greeks, such as Socrates, Pythagoras, Plato, and Aristotle, through the 21st century in the Western world. So we found that there is not a gap like Chinese philosophical sources between ancient times, and suddenly to the 20th century. It's more continuous. Our last finding is about the interactions across Chinese philosophies and Western philosophies. So in Chinese philosophies, no matter traditional or contemporary, those remains as pillars in support of strong Chinese identity and characteristics in the development of music education philosophies in China. And simultaneously, a wide range of Western philosophical sources have drawn the disclosure since the 20th century.
Thank you. So based on our analysis, we can draw a couple of conclusions. The first one is that there's a wide range of philosophies being discussed and applied in China in terms of music education. We still believe that teachers should still draw from these Chinese, Western, ancient, and contemporary philosophical sources in formulating their own philosophy of music education. Because the resources are better known and there's a wide range, and we can make use of them. But it doesn't mean that we have to use all of them at all times. It's just that we can draw from a wider base of philosophers. The second conclusion is that these findings help teachers to gain an increased understanding of the development of history, of philosophy of music education discourse in China. Because sometimes teachers may be a little overwhelmed by seeing so many philosophies being brought up in conferences, in publications, and even teachers. So, and then they may not have a clear path for themselves and how to choose. So I think that through this study, there's a better understanding of how these different philosophies evolved in China and being used in different times in China. And then they have to relate to what has happened and then come to the current time, what is needed, what is most helpful, and how they can formulate their own. And we believe that each teacher should formulate their own philosophy of music education depending on their class, their school, their environment, their society, their community. So philosophy should be fluid. It's not a static phenomenon. So we have to be aware of that. So due to our analysis, we have a few suggestions for further research. The first one is that, as Yiling mentioned, there are only 2 books included in this database. And we are aware of many more books that talked about philosophies of music education in China. So maybe the next study, if you can conduct, is just to focus on books in China, different books about philosophies of music education in China, and see if that result will parallel what we found in the articles, most of the articles. The second suggestion is that there needs to be an investigation of the reason behind the gap in referring to Chinese philosophical sources. As Yang Chen mentioned, there's a big gap from ancient times to the 20th century. So in between, we also know that there are some philosophers, but they are not being cited as much in the publications. And the third one that we suggest is the need to uncover Chinese philosophical sources potentially being overlooked. Again, through our analysis, there are only very few sporadic citations outside the names that are being mentioned, and it doesn't mean that they are not important or not valuable, so we may still dig deeper into these different philosophers. And there may be also other sources that are outside of CNTI, which is the database. And we know that CNTI is very helpful, very comprehensive, but it does not mean that it includes everything and has nothing missed. So we might want to investigate the sources outside of the sources from our study. Thank you. We welcome any questions.